Hello and welcome to the Gizmos workshop here at Adkins Middle School. I'm Mr. Benavides, I teach science, and I've been using Gizmos with my students. They really enjoy it, and I'm here to share what Gizmos is all about and what it can do for you in your classroom. But before we get started, you're going to want to take a look at the Padlet below. You will participate in the Padlet throughout this training, so be sure you're logged in and ready to go. You can use your Google CCISD account, so that way you're going to be able to participate in our reflections and discussions. All set? This is the introduction to Gizmos. Let's get hands-on engagement with science. This introduction to Gizmos is designed to help you adopt this instructional technology. You will learn the basics and you will be able to use Gizmos to support your instruction. After this workshop, you'll be ready to integrate Gizmos with your students for whole class instruction. Now, Gizmos can be used on all devices and it works great with Canvas. It can be used on cell phones, it can be used on Chromebooks, it can be used on iPads. It's perfect for remote learning. Let's take a look at what you'll be learning in this workshop. In this workshop, Introduction to Gizmos, you'll be learning how to navigate the website. You will be participating in one Gizmo as a student. You will learn how to give your students access, and you'll collaborate by creating your own lesson. And ultimately, I'm hoping you'll have fun with all the activities in this training module. My goal for you as a result of this training is that you will be able to design your own Gizmo lesson to incorporate with your students within the next few weeks. All right, but before we begin, let's take a look at some of our Adkins virtual training tips. Always be ready to learn. Do you have important questions? Use the Canvas question discussion. You're going to notice in the training modules in the Gizmos resources, the very last section, there is a Gizmos question thread discussion post that we can use. Okay, keep best practices in mind. You will be open-minded to new ideas. It's time to take action, so make sure that whatever you gain from this training, you will be able to implement, and be sure to stay engaged and participate using the Padlet and all the activities that are in the training module. Speaking of the resources, so in Canvas, you're going to notice that below this training, there is resources for you. I've put the quick start guide, which includes some step-by-step instructions, also some notes on integrating digital tools and Gizmos. I've included some of my personal templates, like my classroom enrollment template that you may use to display on your smart board or any other board that students can see, and also how to embed Gizmos into Canvas directly. So let's go. Let's dive right in. All right, so first question for our Padlet discussion. Make sure that you've logged in and you're ready to participate down below. So what comes to mind when you hear the word Gizmos? So take a moment, pause the video if you need to, type below in the Padlet what comes to mind when you hear the word Gizmos. All right, maybe you're thinking Gizmos are interactive, maybe some kind of online simulations. Maybe it even reminds you of some 80s movie. I'm not sure. Anybody remember what you're not supposed to do to Gizmos? Or Gremlins? Maybe that comes to mind. Who's that in the background? Is that Gizmo? What don't you want to do to Gremlins? Okay, so basically what you guys were thinking, Gizmos are interactive, okay? They're online simulations that are designed to encourage student inquiry, promote learning engagement. They can be used for math and science, so they're great for our content, great for processing some of those skills that are abstract. Ultimately, they're designed all the way to 12th grade, from 3rd to 12th grade. So there's plenty of lessons available for our middle school students. And Without a doubt, they are fun and engaging. It's a fun way to build learning, build new knowledge, enhance knowledge, and introduce and reinforce some of those concepts that students have a hard time understanding. All right, poll time. So in the Padlet, post some of your honest assessment with Gizmo. Have you created your login yet? Have you set up your classes? How many have you set up? How comfortable are you with technology? You know, this year we've had to really up our technology game. So give yourself an honest assessment. How comfortable are you with technology? What are you most eager to use Gizmos with that's going to help you in your classroom? And what skill or skills are you most eager for your students to practice and gain with Gizmo? So take a moment and look at the Padlet and complete some of those poll questions. You're going to notice a Google form. You're going to click on the link that's going to open up the Google form in Padlet and go ahead and answer the survey. When you're ready, come on back over to the training video. All right, now that we're ready to begin, I'm going to need you to take on two roles. I need you to take on the role as students during a lesson, and I'm going to need you to be engaged with the content, even though I know you know the content. I'll also need you to take on the role of teachers. Okay, so imagine you're observing your students as they are partaking in the lesson. So pay close attention to the questioning, the inquiry, and the strategies that are used during the lesson. Because after this lesson that I'm going to model for you, I'm going to ask you what were the best practices during the lesson. So I'm going to be modeling a distance time graph lesson, which is great for 6th grade, great for 8th grade. You used it with my students. And like I said, I want you to take the role as a student. So you will be participating and you will be reflecting in the discussion in the Padlet. But before we begin this lesson, I'm going to show you a few things on the site. I'm going to show you how to navigate the site. So let's take a look at that. All right, so here we go. I have the website pulled up, explorelearning.com, which is the host for Gizmos. Now you're going to notice right off the bat, there's this friendly question mark down here. So if you're ever stuck, if you ever need help, these are some quick resources for you if you ever need it. Now, I understand, we are extremely busy under our remote learning circumstances and teaching virtually while face-to-face and everything. So if you need an immediate response, you can try, contacting Gizmos, or like I said, you can use our discussion thread here in this Canvas training module down below. Maybe one of our fellow peers has an answer for you, or myself. So help is available if you need it. And let's talk about a few ways on how you search for Gizmos, okay? Because it's pretty cool. There are several ways where you can do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this magnifying glass here that says Find Gizmos. So I click on that. Now we're going to notice there are a couple of ways to do this, a few ways actually. I'm going to show you, I'm going to go through each one for you. So first of all, we can start by just typing in keywords. Okay, so I can start by typing in distance. And right off the bat, I can already see there are a few Gizmos related. Remember, Gizmos is for science and math. So here we can see some science topics as well as mathematical topics. Okay, we can try other keywords. Okay, so that's one way to search is by typing in keywords that are related to the content. Now, the other way that I want to talk about is by looking at this little globe here, Gizmos by academic standard. So by clicking on this, we can actually search by standard. So let's take a look. I'm going to click on that. Okay, so we can scroll down and we can see all the different states. Now we're obviously in the Lone Star state of Texas, so we can browse our TEKS. So I'll click on Texas and we can see it separates the math and science TEKS, which is awesome. Very cool. And let's take a look at a 7th grade one, shall we? So I'm going to click on 7th grade. You can explore your TEKS, and we can scroll down and let's see. We can see all of the 7th grade TEKS. So let me just let me say I'm interested in dichotomous keys. So maybe I want to gather some info on the lesson before I actually launch the Gizmo. So I can click lesson info. And here I can see what the lesson's all about. Now we're going to talk about the lesson materials a little bit later. So it's kind of giving me an intro of what's going on with this Gizmo. This looks like I'm going to be able to identify and classify 5 types of organisms in this Gizmo, which is really cool. And even after this, there's the ability to make your own dichotomous key. So that's a really awesome activity going on in the dichotomous key Gizmo. All right, let's take a look at another way. So that's one way, again, by searching through standards, and obviously you can look at your grade level, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Okay, so we talked about keyword, standard, and then let's talk about by grade and topic. Okay, so I can also click the little apple there, and I can see, again, it separates it beautifully by math and science, which is awesome. So looking at science, and remember how I said at the beginning that these gizmos are designed all the way from 3rd grade to 12th grade. So there's a wide variety of gizmos. So here we're in middle school, that's us here at Adkins. So you can just pick a topic. Say cells is coming up on our scope. Imagine it is that clearly already passed for us, but we can click on it, and that's another way to find a gizmo suitable for you. Okay, you can search by topic by clicking on the apple and then scrolling down and finding the topic that suits your students' needs. Now, the other way that I want to talk about is searching by textbook. Okay, so we all know our textbook Science Fusion, brought to you by Houghton Mifflin, right? So if we look, we have all the publishers, which is great. So if we scroll down here, we have our publisher, Houghton Mifflin, of the Science Fusion, and we can see that unfortunately, it is currently not correlated with our Texas TEKS. So although you can search by publisher, ours is currently not in the system. So just to show you, that's another way where you can search for a gizmo. All right, but just to show you what the Georgia book looks like, just so you can see how the gizmos are aligned to the chapter, it's pretty cool. So you can see that each chapter is aligned with the gizmo, but unfortunately, our Texas book is not there yet. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the magnifying glass, and we are going to search for the gizmo distance time graphs metric. So this is the gizmo that we're gonna be doing today in this workshop. Definitely need to log in, or else I'm gonna run out of time. So that's something to be knowful of, is that if students don't log in, there's sort of a 5-minute trial which will expire, and then they're out of the session. But it does give them a little preview. But more info on joining classes later. So here it is. This is the gizmo for distance time graphs metric, okay? We're gonna take a look at this. This is related to 6th and 8th grade. So let's get it going. All right, so we're gonna launch the gizmo, and this is the one that we're gonna model. And what I want you to do, because remember, you're gonna be taking on the role as a student, I want you to open up a new tab. You can go to www.explorelearning.com, or I opened up Canvas because we can go through Clever. It's a lot easier. So, well, maybe not necessarily easier, but it's another way. So you can go through the backpack and open up the Rapid Identity, and it is part of our applications here. So Gizmo, along with our awesome other resources. So you can launch it that way. And then I want you to go to the magnifying glass and join us, right? Several ways you can do it. You can start off by typing in distance. And remember, we're looking at the distance time graphs metric. Okay. But I've got mine here pulled up. So go ahead and pull yours up. Now, if for some reason you have not linked your Explore Learning, or you haven't signed up your ExploreLearning.com account, or you're having trouble with Clever, go ahead and post that in the Canvas questions discussion thread that we have in the module, and I'll be sure to get that, help you out with that setup. Okay, so hopefully you're here and you have it open. We're looking at the distance time graph in metric. So what I want you to do is a bit of a self-discovery. Okay, you are the student, and I want to give you 1 minute to just play around with it. Okay, just do whatever you want, play around, see what you can do, what can't you do, what did you find out. So go ahead, pause the video. You have 1 minute of self-discovery, and then I'll see you back so that way we can talk about it in our Padlet discussion. So have 1 minute to play around with the distance time graphs metric. All right, so if you'll take a break from that for a moment, let's jump over to our discussions in chat. Okay, so what did you find out? What could you manipulate in the Gizmo? So go ahead and type your responses in the Padlet down below. Think about what could you change? What did you find out using this Gizmo? All right, so maybe some things you notice: you can change the graph, you can add another runner, you can mess with the stopwatch, okay? You can possibly take off the animations, but let me talk about a few other things. Let's take a look. All right, so we can take off the graph, you can take off the animation, you can add another runner to the graph, show animation, you can add the other one. Okay, you can mess with the stopwatch. Okay, you can start it over, so green starting it, the red one starting it over. Another thing you can do is you can change the number of points by sliding it over. All right, you can also do this manually by typing in the number of points and then pressing enter. As we continue exploring, another thing you're going to notice is this little camera icon in the top right corner of the graph. You can click on that, take a screenshot, which is really awesome. This is a great feature. I love this about Gizmo, because then you can right click it and you can copy it, and then you could paste it into a Word document. I'll show you that in a moment, but yeah, we can paste it into a Word document. You have your kiddos add to the assignment, okay? There's another place where you can do that. So you can also come down to this tools menu here. You can take a screenshot, which gives you more than just the graph. Right now we see the runners and the points and the stopwatch. Okay, so 2 places where you can take the screenshot. Now also on the tools menu, you're gonna notice there's arrows, which is really cool, because then we can drag them over and we can erase it by dragging it back up. And in Gizmos, there are 4 different colors of arrows, which is really cool and convenient for asking questions with your students. So for example, I can drag out, you know, say this purple arrow here, and then I can drag out another arrow here. Okay, and I might ask a question like, what is the purple arrow pointing to? What axis is that? You see that it's measured in meters. Okay, and you're right. That's the y-axis. Very good, Marco. Excellent. All right, you can even extend it. You can say, all right, great, you got the y-axis. Awesome. And what kind of variable is that? What kind of variable is the y-axis? You're right. Excellent job, Marco. That's the dependent variable. Excellent. All right, you can do the same thing for the green arrow. And what variable and axis is the green arrow pointing to? Correct. That's the independent variable and the x-axis. You're so smart. You're awesome. Okay, so kind of think about that. You know, you can do that as a guided lesson with your kids, or maybe you have something typed up, some kind of guided questions that you can then have your kids follow along and do. Okay, and then once again, if I want to get rid of these arrows, just click on them. You can drag them on over. Okay, just click and drag. Arrows be gone. Adios. Close that backpack. And then remember the screenshot function, which is a really cool tool. Give you a screenshot of the whole thing, which then you can right click, copy, and you can paste that in a Word document, a Google slide, or anything where the kids can really embellish and elaborate on, which is really cool. All right, let's take a look at a scenario. Okay, so we got a red runner here. He's finished his race. Imagine he's faster than the speed of light. He's faster than Superman. He's quite the fast fellow. But what I want you to think about is, what did Red Runner do to achieve this race? Okay, so you can use a vocabulary word that you've learned. Okay, you can use the data points to help guide your answer. But think about it. What did Red Runner do to achieve this race? What's going on? All right, let's take a look. So maybe you have some possible answers like, he traveled at a speed of 10. Okay, that's great, but 10 what? 10 what? What's going on? Oh, yes, 10 meters per second. Very good, Angela. Awesome. Was this rate constant? Did he accelerate? Oh, yes, Andy. He traveled at a constant rate of 10 meters per second. You're absolutely right. Excellent. I see the rest of you in the chat as well. Yes, he ran 2 meters per second. No, not 2, 10 meters per second, John. Yes, very good. Oh, excellent. He ran at a steady speed for 40 meters in 4 seconds, which was a total speed of 10 meters per second. Awesome. So very good. Those are some possible discussions you can have with your students there. And then you can hit the green timer. You can say, all right, so Red Runner, you know, he's back. He's going to do the race again. He's going to prove to the world that he is indeed Superman. He's so fast. He's like, I shouldn't say Superman. He's the Flash, all right? This guy is the Flash. Red. He's even red like the Flash, right? So let's hit that green. All right. Look at him go. Okay. So then maybe something I want to do is I want to go back and I can grab this green line here and I can check. Okay, that I can see. I can check with my students if indeed what they're telling me is correct. So let's take a look. So let's take a look. Yeah, 1 second. Red Runner, Flash Boy. 10 meters. Looking good. The next second, it's up to 20. Another 10 meters. Excellent. Moving on to the 3-second mark. Another 10 meters. And up to 4 seconds, the final second mark. Another 10 meters. So give yourselves a round of applause. You're correct. He traveled 10 meters per second. Excellent, students. All right, students, so we're going to take a look at another race. So I'm going to start it over, and notice by hitting the red button there, It just started over. Now I'm going to change my number of points here. Let's see. Let me change it to, yeah, let's go with 3. Change it to 3 points. Okay, so notice by adding the 3 points, we now have this other point here. So I'm going to just bend this down here. Ooh, okay. What do we got going on here? So red runner, red, he's got a quick recovery, right? He's like the Flash. So red is about to run another race, students. But before he does that, I want you to make a prediction. Okay, I want you to make a prediction of what you think is going to happen. What's his race going to look like? What do you think his motion is going to be like? So think about that. Again, think about some of the vocabulary words, okay, or also use the data points on the graph to help guide your answers. But make a prediction, students. What do you predict is gonna happen to his race this time? All right, so some possible predictions, maybe the runner's going to go to the end and then go back to the start. Okay. How do you know that? How do you know that, Cindy? That's a great answer. How do you know that? Okay, maybe Corrine says he will run back to the start after 2 seconds. Okay. We're just building some predictions here. Thank you. Maybe you say he's going to run for 40 meters away from the start and then return back to the start. Awesome. Okay, how do you know that? Try to provoke some vocabulary words. Okay, what's going on if he does return back to the start? Is he possibly accelerating? Oh, very good, Andy. He will accelerate by changing directions. Okay. Now, that's a good point, Andy. You mentioned that he's going to be accelerating. Does he rest? Does Red have a break during this race? Okay. Doesn't look like he's going to rest. How do you know that? How do you know he's not resting? And what will his speed be? 10 meters per second? 20 meters per second? Okay, how do you know that? How do you know it's 20 meters per second? Good job. All right, students, you give me some excellent predictions. Oh, no worries, Cindy. It's okay. You can change your prediction. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's see what's going on with Red. Let's watch his. Let's observe this, right? So we're gonna go ahead and hit the green button. Ha! Look at him go. All right, so let's check this out. We're gonna break the race up in 2 parts. Okay, we're gonna start off with the first point here. So I'm gonna drag this over. And one thing I should have mentioned is that you can full screen it, right? So we can take a look at this Gizmo in full action mode. Okay, so let's take a look. We're gonna drag it over. So let's take a look at his distance. All right, Red Runner traveled 40 meters in what time? In 2 seconds. Oh my goodness. I told you he was fast. Wow. Flash indeed. All right, so we have his distance, 40 meters, and we have the time of 2 seconds. How do we get his speed? What's the formula for speed? How are we going to calculate Red's speed? Yeah. Very good, Adrian. Distance over time. Remember, students, distance divided by time is how we calculate speed. Excellent, Adrian. All right, very good. So we got his speed. Now let's connect this to math. So in math, we have, in science, we have the distance divided by time. In math, we can call this rise over run. All right, so in math, we have rise over run. We would call that a positive correlation, or even in physics, we have a positive correlation. So what would we call that? A positive, yes, that's right, Kieran, a positive slope. Excellent. Excellent job. All right, let's take a look at the next part of the race. Well, unfortunately, Red forgot his phone at home. Oh no, he's got to go back. So he's going to need to go back to the start of the race. So let's take a look at that. Let's see how that happened. Okay. So he left his phone at home. No worries. He's quick. All right. So going back to the start of the race, he forgot his phone at home. All right, let's make some observations here, though, students. We're looking at the graph, and it's looking like the line's going backwards, right? But can time go backwards, students? Can we turn back time in this day and age? You wish? No, you're right. We can't turn back time. So unfortunately, we can't turn back time, and we have a negative distance over a positive time, or we have a negative correlation, or what kind of slope would we call this? Yep, a negative slope. Good job. Excellent. All right, excellent job, students. You're doing awesome here. So we got another race we're going to look at. I'm going to start Red Runner back over. I'm going to actually change the number of points now from 3 to, and remember, you can either drag them here or I can just type it in. Yeah, so I have 5. Let's see, 6. Okay, perfect. Oh, let me hit. There we go. All right, awesome. Let me actually take off runner 2. There we go. And let me let's change up the graph, shall we? Yeah. Okay, so we now have 6 points, and I'm creating another graph to discuss with my students. Okay, so notice I can simply grab the points and I can move them around. Yeah, oh, okay. You know what, actually, yeah, let's get that going. All right, now let's take a look at this, students. And by the way, we're doing this lesson guided, right? You're working synchronously with your students. This is either face-to-face or say you're all virtual. So imagine this is an all virtual situation. And I'm gonna ask my students, all right, now what do you see now? What is something new that I added to this race that wasn't there before? Let me know in the chat. What's going on? What's something new in this race that wasn't there before? Oh yeah, I see that. Very good. It's looking like he's stopping to rest. Very good. I see you said stopping to rest. Stop resting points. He stops to rest twice. Excellent. Red stops. He's got resting points. Jane, very good. Resting time. Cindy says he rests. Excellent, students. Good job in the chat. Well, you guys are very observant, but how do you know this? We haven't even started the race yet. How do you know that he stops? You guys are telling me in the chat that he stops, but how do you know? We haven't started the race. How do you know he stopped? Oh yeah, the horizontal line, excellent. Yes, good job, horizontal line. Very good, students. So we see distance is increasing, right? And there's certain sections where there's no change in distance. We can see that. But remember, as we talked before, we can't stop time. Time keeps on ticking. We can't stop time. So distance, we can see it's changing. Time is constant. So very good, students. Now let's go ahead and check it out. Let's have him race and see if this indeed confirms what you guys are telling me. Wow, interesting race. All right, so several things we can take a look at actually here. So we indeed confirmed that red stops, right? And he stops twice. We saw that visually. But now let's look at acceleration. At which point in the race is Red's acceleration the greatest? And how do you know that? All right, so the last part of that question is very important. How do you know that acceleration was the greatest? At which point, and how do you know? All right, very good. Yes, excellent, Mary. Good job, Jane. Good job, Cindy. And remember, I'm encouraging students to participate in the chat, okay? We're modeling this lesson, it's guided. You're asking those questions like how, you're provoking students to participate. So very good. The steepest line indicates the greatest acceleration. Excellent, the last segment shows us the greatest slope. The slope looks like it's the biggest at the end. The steepest line indicates the greatest slope. Therefore, we have the greatest acceleration. Excellent answer, students. All right, students, you did an excellent job with that. I'm going to go ahead and reset this. And now it's time for your first challenge task. That's right, students. The challenge is set for you. Are you ready? So here's where we have finished, say, the guided lessons, the instruction, and now it's time for me to assign some kind of homework or some kind of practice assignment. So participants out there, this is your first challenge task because I want you to do this in Canvas. You will see the challenge task assignment. So what I want you to do, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a sec, or I'm gonna actually pop over. All right, so here is your challenge task. You are gonna design an exciting race. Now that you know how to change the race, manipulate it, I want you to design an exciting race with both runners. Okay, so you're gonna add 2 runners and I want you to add at least 7 points. Okay, so I'm describing the task to the students. I'm telling them the minimum requirements. However, I'm leaving it open for them to challenge themselves and add more points to the race, but they have to have at least 7. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a snapshot of the graph and then you're gonna paste it in a Google Doc. Okay, so assuming that your students know how to do this, you may have to guide them through how to, paste something into a Google Doc, which I showed you guys how to copy and an image by taking a screenshot. You would just simply then paste it into a doc. So you're going to take a snapshot of the graph and paste it in the Google Doc. And your challenge, students, your task is imagine that you're working for the city newspaper. You saw this amazing race. Okay, you're part of the sports committee. You're part of the sports anchors for the news team. So you're going to write a detailed news story about the race for our city newspaper. So I want you to include as much vocabulary that you can, include some of the points, describe what's happening, make it exciting for the fans, for all our sports enthusiasts out there. So you're gonna write this detailed news story in the Google Doc. You're gonna type it up. So 2 things, you're gonna paste your screenshot in and you're gonna write a detailed news story. Now, I want you guys to do this to show evidence that you understand how to assign this kind of task to your students in the classroom. Like I said, this could be something they could do after you have sort of modeled and guided some kind of lesson, or possibly at the end for a homework assignment that they can then bring the next day. You can even extend it by having students present their news articles to you or to the class. Maybe even extend it by possibly making some kind of animation to it. There's endless possibilities of how you can get really creative with this, and it's a lot of fun. Students really like to take, it's great to give students the role-playing role, right? So to let them take on different roles. So I challenge you to complete this task in Canvas. Take a screenshot of your race, upload your news story as your Canvas assignment. So I'm going to give you guys about 3 minutes. You guys that are participating, go ahead and pause it and complete the task, and then come back, and we're going to talk about some best practices that we had in our Gizmo. All right, so if everybody will come back to our workshop, and now we're going to talk about some of the best practices that went on in the Gizmo. So let's take a look. Okay, so in the Padlet below, I want you to think about what were some of the best practices that you experienced while doing this Gizmo with me. So what best practices did you experience while doing this Gizmo? Go ahead and type in some of your responses in the Padlet. So some of the things you might be thinking about, well, maybe modeling independent practice. Student might say, or you might say writing in science, and student might say, why are we writing in science? This isn't English class. Well, you're right. This is science class, and in science, we always write. So yes, writing in science. There was multiple things going on, letting yourself discover. So yeah, definitely some of those things. So self-discovery is a very important thing you want to let your students do. Okay, you don't immediately want to tell them how to do everything. You don't want to spoon feed them all the time. So letting them self-discover, I didn't immediately tell you how to do things, which was great. So after the self-discovery, then I went over it, which is extremely important because you don't want to just have them self-discover and then be pointless. So after the self-discovery, going over it is vital, very important. We also imagine sharing information in a class discussion, so face-to-face, building off of each other, feeding off student answers, also in a virtual sense, sharing information in the chat. So building off student responses, yes, excellent. And also giving students wait time is extremely important, okay? Especially in all of the learning situations, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's hybrid, or it's all virtual, giving students the chance to respond. Wait time is crucial. And also another thing that I did in this Gizmo was scaffold the questions. Okay, so we started off fairly simple, and then the answers kind of stacked and scaffolded up, built on each other, progressed. They got progressively difficult. I tried to provoke more vocabulary, try to get students to connect other concepts and other courses such as math. And then finally, the independent practice, right? I gave you guys the independent race for you to design your own race however you want, manipulate the variables. I gave you some requirements. However, there was no absolute limit, right? There's a minimum, but there's no maximum. So you guys had the ability, students had the ability to really come up with a variety. We would see a variety of different project and assignments, which is really cool. So, and then let's talk about some of the best practices that we would see in some of the core subjects, right? Crossing math, science, and English together. So let's add to your Padlet discussion, right? So let's take a look at some of these best practices in the different subjects. And I know for sure we did E1. Notice how that's considered an ELA skill, demonstrating independent practice, which is excellent. Some other things we absolutely did, S2, S3, S4. So in the Padlet, you can write, S2, S3, the different numbers. Okay, so think about some of the different practices. So hopefully you came up with some of the ones that we all kind of see. We used mathematics, information and computer technology, and computational thinking. We constructed explanations for science and designed solutions. We were able to S8 obtain, evaluate, and communicate our information. If we look at some of the math, we were able to M1 make sense of problems and try to solve them. We were able to use appropriate tools, M5. We were able to look for and make use of some structure, which is great. If we look at some of the English skills, well, we did a lot of those, right? Building strong content knowledge, responding to varying demands of audience. Think of students responding and building off each other's conversations. So valuing our evidence, which is also a great one, E5. So I encourage you to, if you want to take a screenshot of this chart, which is going to be very helpful, and try to incorporate some of these strategies in your teaching. It doesn't have to just be science, but you're doing a lot of these best practices, whether you realize it or not. You're crossing English skills, you're crossing math and science. We use a lot of math and science, so it's wonderful how we really use these best practices to boost and foster student engagement. So it's great. We use a lot of best practices when we're using Gizmos. And as you can see, we used a lot of these best practices in such a short amount of time, which is wonderful. So using Gizmos is really a great way to bring the best out of your teaching abilities. Okay, you're fostering inquiry, you're promoting discovery. You want to make sure that you're asking the what if questions, permitting students to think, to make predictions, challenge them to make hypotheses, to make outcomes, to predict what might happen, ask probing questions, to really spur engagement and conversation, and also, challenge them, construct arguments, have them bounce off each other, maybe throw a debate in there so that they can justify their answers. Also, Gizmos really allows us opportunities to think through writing. With that challenge task that I gave you that you can assign to your students, okay, you can customize your discussions, your guided lesson, and you can challenge them to be unique and creative. You can also, with Gizmos, customize lesson materials that I'm going to show you in a moment. You can also encourage students to include vocabulary that you've included in your lessons that you guys have taught your students throughout units. Also, Gizmos really helps us develop higher level thinking skills. It's great for, like I said, scaffolding problems and also scaffolding student learning. It's great for requiring students to include evidence and reasoning, okay, not just answering and circling a multiple choice question, but actually supporting their explanations with evidence, and also encouraging students to look for patterns in the graph. We notice the pattern of the horizontal line, which means that the runner had stopped. So encouraging and finding patterns. And Gizmos is a great way to build classroom dynamics. It really is. One of the things that I love in my classroom is engaging my students through conversation, having classroom discussions that build off of each other. So Gizmos is a great way to really utilize a variety of these types of conversations in multiple instructional settings, whether it's face-to-face, hybrid, or in Zoom, completely virtual. And also, you can give students the ability to control the Gizmo, okay, the self-discovery. So encouraging and building that classroom structure, that classroom engagement, which is really going to push and motivate them to want to do better in your class, to want to do better in science. So these are some great ways that Gizmos allows us to incorporate the best out of us in teaching. It really does. It brings out the best in you. So I encourage you to, take a screenshot of this, this chart here and think about how you are incorporating these strategies, and then you will incorporate these strategies in the next Gizmo that you're planning. All right, so moving on. Now, I want you to reflect, okay? So take a look at the Padlet down below, and I want you to think about something, a lesson that you're gonna be teaching in the next couple of weeks, okay? So reflect for about 2 minutes by thinking about a lesson you'll be teaching in the next couple of weeks. Okay, think about a concept that's coming up in science. Look at your scope and sequence, okay? Think about what TEKs are approaching, what can you incorporate with and use Gizmos. How can you use Gizmos in your lesson planning? So reflect and type one word or maybe a phrase in the reflection and Padlet of a lesson you'll be teaching in the next couple of weeks. All right, now I want to show you some of the lesson resources that are available, some of the lesson materials that are available in Gizmos that are extremely helpful and that you can actually assign directly to Canvas. So let's take a look at that. All right, so I'm going to use the same one from the distance time graphs. I'm going to go back, close this out there. All right, so let's take a look at the lesson materials. So right off the bat, the student exploration sheet is awesome. This is a great resource. I use it as a Google Cloud assignment. So there's PDF version of the Microsoft Word, but now there's the Google Doc, which is great for us that use our Google Cloud assignments. So let's take a look at that. I'll show you what it looks like. It's really good. It's awesome. And like I said, you can assign this as an assignment in Canvas. So you can, you can tell the students where they're going to need to type. All right, so the orange boxes there, you can see they're exactly, shows exactly where students are going to need to type, so there's no confusion. You can take away vocabulary words. Okay, you can add vocabulary words if you would like to. All right, you always want to start with the prior knowledge questions, which is really cool. You can manipulate that if you want. You can, add your own warm up, or you can have students do this warm up, which is cool too. You can actually maybe take a snip or a snippet shot of a star question and embed it into this. What I like is the activities too. So the student exploration will have typically 3 activities, activity A, B, and C. And you can see here that it tells students exactly what they need to do. So it shows them how to get the gizmo ready, and it has guiding questions, which you can either extend or shorten if you want to. So it's a great resource. Like I said, I use this and it's wonderful for, allowing students to work independently while you're monitoring the room, you're circling, you're asking probing questions, you're also building discussions while students are working independently, because you can encourage students to share their data and challenge other students to come up with different responses. So it's really good. And you can also kind of decide how you want to use it. Maybe you want to plan, 1 or 2 activity A you do with them. Maybe activity B you let them do on their own, and activity C you assign for homework. Or maybe you want to completely take out activity C and save it for another day. So you can really break up the student exploration into, you can make it out of a whole week lesson, right? You can use this Gizmo for a whole week lesson, which is great. This resource is wonderful. I really like it. I encourage you guys to use it and check it out. Okay, so there's obviously the answer key, and then the teacher guide is a great place for you to start. If you want to get some knowledge of what the Gizmo is all about. Kind of gives you an overview of what you're going to be expected to find, what you're going to be noticing, gives you some ideas of discussion questions and follow-up activity. I really like this. It makes connections to the real world, which is awesome. So you can also even, you can do some hunting in YouTube or look up a news article that's related to this connection, show the kids. It's a great way for them to see, real world applications. And look at that. There's some math connections. Okay, so the teacher guide is really good. Check it out. It's great for getting you set up with how to run that gizmo. And then also, we have a vocabulary sheet. Okay, so the vocabulary sheet, and you can pull the PDF, or you can even pull up the document, right? The Word document, because then you can type add vocabulary words, take away vocabulary words, okay? think about your word wall that you might introduce to your students. You can add this to add it to this, and you can also encourage students to maybe make their own flashcards or maybe some type of Quizlet activity using the vocabulary words. So the vocabulary resource is great too, the vocabulary sheet. Okay, so coming on down, let me show you some other things that are available. And notice this is in the different gizmos as well. So if I search up, plate tectonics, and I click on that, I can also see we have the same lesson materials in our community section. So you will find this in every single gizmo. Let me go back to our metric ones because that's what we're working with. Ooh, logged me out for some reason. Yeah, so these resources are in every single one, which is great. And then we can go down, we can look at our community. Okay, so this will give you some more ideas, maybe some examples of translations. So we might see, look in this one we have in French, which is pretty cool. So you can kind of get some feedback from the community, which is always good. And then I want to head over to our assessment questions, guys. So the assessment questions are really good. So whenever you launch the gizmo, if I go back, the assessment questions are below. So you can notice that the assessment questions, there's two ways to access them. You can access them by launching the gizmo, or you can click where it says assessment questions. Okay, now these are great to serve as warm-ups, pre-assessment, just to check to see what students might know about the concept. You can also use these as post-assessment evaluations. Okay, see what they have learned after doing the gizmo. Okay, you can possibly even use these assessment questions as exit tickets. So you come with the 5 questions. You can take a snapshot. You can use your snip tool, take a screenshot. You can embed these in Canvas as warm-ups. You can share your screen in your Zoom meeting. So you can do a lot with these assessment questions, which is really great. So I encourage you to think about how you could possibly use the assessments as well in the Gizmo resources. So you can also get some reports from how your students did on the assessment. So say you assigned a few as a post-assessment, okay, you can click on results and you can kind of see, or you can use this as tutoring. So maybe you have a group of students, a small group that you're working with, and you can kind of see how they did. You can reassign, you can have them restart it. The reports are really good for you as a teacher to kind of think about how you can modify and differentiate instruction for different students. Also, you can delete, Gizmo from your class once you are no longer using it. You can even separate them into categories, and also you can hide the Gizmo from students, so that way they're not trying to work on other Gizmo, or they might be lost and they're unsure which ones to do. So there's a lot you can do in the menu to keep it simple for students so they know exactly which one they're going to be working and focusing on. So some other things that are really helpful here in the manage class section. Okay, so you can add headings, as you can kind of see how I did here. If you want, you could even add headings and plan your whole year. Okay, you could separate and add gizmos for each 6 weeks. You could even separate it by beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. So you can do that by clicking adding a heading, and say you wanted to find the gizmos for the 4th 6 weeks. Now you would have, for some reason, you have to refresh there. But you can also rename the class if you choose to. Okay, and you can manage your roster. Okay, so here's the menu where in case you need to work with your class. Also, whenever you're having your students join, I'll get to that in a moment, but say students have you know, they forgot their login or the password for whatever reason, you have all that information here. Okay, so you can give the students their password and their information there. You can, you know, click to show it and whatnot. Okay, and you can add up to 7 classes, so it's perfect for us at Adkins. Okay, and for each class you get a unique class code. Okay, and to keep it simple on the students, I have them join with using their student ID, the same one that they use for Canvas is going to be their username, and I have them use their student ID for the password. Okay, just to kind of keep it simple. Now, obviously, some students kind of go against that, or maybe they miss that step. That's why you have it here, you know, in case somebody, you know, kind of does their own thing. But it's good to give them a format and a formula so that way it's as consistent as can be. Okay, so that's managing the class. I do want to point out and encourage you to check out the class enrollment template. That's the one that I use to get my kids to join. Okay, it includes the instructions, and it also includes the Google slide that I have displayed on the smartboard, so that way when they walk in, or I have it screen shared in Zoom, they see the steps exactly how the directions are laid out. All right, so it's about that time we're ending the workshop. So I'm going to jump over to the presentation, and it's time for you to plan your Gizmos lesson. So as you are planning, I want you to think about a couple of things. Jump back to your reflection in the Padlet. Okay, so what topic did you choose that you're going to be teaching in the next coming weeks? I want you to search for a gizmo with that concept in mind that's going to help you teach it. Also, think about how you would incorporate that gizmo into your lesson. Okay, how can you use the student exploration? How about some of the activities from the community? Perhaps the teacher guide is going to give you some connections to the real world. And also, do you need to modify anything? Is there anything that you might modify in the lesson, maybe change up? So that you're going to complete in Canvas. Notice the icon here in the Canvas discussion. So let me just kind of show you where that's at. Jumping over, planning your Gizmos lesson discussion. Okay, you've completed the challenge task. Then we got the plan discussion. And then I challenge you for the Kahoot. Who's gonna be the top Gizmo in our training session here? So planning your Gizmos lesson discussion, let's take a look at that. So let me kind of show you an example of something that you might think about. Okay, so you're going to post as a reply. So we can just kind of be brief with this. Just kind of think of this as a rough outline to get your ideas down. So say I'm going to be teaching, you know, cells. Okay, maybe I'll do this in bullet points. Okay, so say cells is my concept coming up. Okay, and then I'm kind of thinking, well, I'm going to need to teach cell structure. So sorry, cell structure, and maybe that's going to be, you know, a synchronous lesson that I'm going to spread over 2 days. Okay, so I'm kind of thinking 2-day lesson over cell structure. It's going to be synchronous. Okay, and I know that I'm going to want to think of other resources, right? Because we definitely want to help the students understand, and Gizmo doesn't have everything that's out there. So we definitely want to elaborate on the content and help students understand. So I might, you know, find a video from the Amoeba Sisters. Okay, the Amoeba Sisters are great. I love them on YouTube. So I might find this in YouTube and say this is going to be something that's asynchronous. Okay, so the kids can kind of do that, you know, one day. I'll have some questions to go along with that. Okay, so I'm kind of planning out my lesson, and then I might jump over to the community. Okay, so that learning community that's in your lesson materials. Okay, so maybe, you know, something from our community. I found, you know, a cells flip book that's going to be helpful. And I'm going to say that they're going to work on that. We're going to do it synchronous for 1 day. Okay. And then also from our community, an inquiry activity. That can be asynchronous. Okay, and then I'll definitely want to end it maybe with the post-assessment. Okay, kind of going back, recapping the whole week, the 5 assessment questions. Okay, and that'll be asynchronous as well. Okay, so this is just kind of a rough idea, guys. You're definitely going to spend more time with it and focus on your content, your topics, your resources, but ultimately look in Gizmo, okay? Look at the community, find the Gizmo, look at the lesson materials, the student exploration. Okay, I can simply replace the community with the student exploration, okay? And I can modify that, okay? So say I want to do the student exploration instead of the community activities, and I could say do activities B and C asynchronously, and then the intro, like the warm-up, and activity A will be synchronous. Okay, so there's tons of different ways. I want you to think about what you've gathered from this workshop, what Gizmos has to offer, and plan out your lesson. All right, so it's time we wrap up the workshop and let's take a look at the next steps. So you guys learned a great deal of information in this workshop in our introduction to Gizmos. You learned how to navigate the website. You learned how to search for Gizmos in multiple ways. You learned how to apply best practices in face-to-face, in hybrid, and in complete virtual situations. You learned how to use different lesson materials such as the student exploration, the community, and how to incorporate the assessment questions. And you ultimately learned how you can apply Gizmos in your classroom. The next steps are for you to experiment, okay? Try it out for yourself, reflect on what worked, what didn't work, and repeat the cycle. Okay, you learn as you go. You learn by doing. The more you do it, the better you get at Gizmos. The next steps for you in this training involve making sure that you check out the resources, check out the templates so that you know how to assign students into your Gizmos classes. Also, take a look at some of the other resources for how to embed into Canvas and the helpful quick start guides, which are always good. And the last thing is I challenge you to the Kahoot. So the Kahoot will test your knowledge over this training, see how well you understood this workshop and what your big takeaways were. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to collaborating with you in Gizmos. Take care.